Welcome to Assimilating Knowledge. Today we welcome our guest, Stephen Hudler, author of the Everrealm book series and creator of the YouTube channel, The Nerd Way. Welcome, Steve.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. So, Steve,
Yes.
Just so everybody is aware, you and I have met before. Or you're the co-host on a panel show on Neon Tardis's channel on the weekends, and occasionally I will guest. How did you guys hook up?
There was another Chris and another fella had a similar show going on, and I guess they saw something they liked from me. I guess I had seen something I did on YouTube, and they reached out and they wanted to know if I wanted to be on. So I said, yeah, sure. And I was on once, and like 2 weeks later, they said, hey, would you like to be on some more? And then for some reason that partnership fizzled. And Chris said, I'm going to strike out on my own. And he started his own thing. He's like, hey, you want to jump on and help me out? And I'm like, I'd love to. So
nice. Well, speaking of Neon TARDIS, it's 3 a.m. This better be worth it. Dance monkeys, he says. Well, we appreciate you being up for this.
It'll be worth it.
You daggum right, it will. All right, so just to be clear, you consider yourself a writer on YouTube, not a YouTuber. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. And why do you feel it's so important to make that distinction?
Because I think there are a lot of YouTubers out there who can't write, who couldn't write a good story to save their life, who've been on YouTube for years. And because they have built up such a huge fan base, they can put out anything they want and the people will buy it. Whereas I put my first book out in 2020, and I didn't start my YouTube channel till 2021. And I did that for the mere fact that I just needed an outreach, someplace to go to reach people, to let them know, hey, I'm a writer, I write books, and I would love it if you would check it out.
Right. And that's the game, isn't it? That's, I can't imagine, because in reality, you kind of started when all of this was a thing. But can you imagine being one of the old heads that, got their start in the 90s and kind of got big? And then all of the sudden, these companies are coming to them and saying, hey, you need to get on social media. And they're like, what is a social media?
Yeah.
I can't imagine how, for us, again, there's a learning curve, but we didn't learn how to do it any other way. So,
yeah.
So that's kind of nice. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of had all these ideas in your head and you were kicking them around, and you were really truly wanting to find an artist to do a comic book, right?
Yeah. The whole story for Deadlock started way back in the mid 90s.
Nice.
And I was walking out of my local comic book store, and I was walking to my car, and I can remember like it was yesterday. It just hit me like a bolt of lightning. This whole idea for this story. And I thought that would make a great comic book.
A bolt of lightning, you say?
Yes. And I toyed with it off and on for years, and it was something that I thought I was going to make a comic book out of, and I was this is before the internet was really the internet, so I didn't have the reach that we have today, where you can find artists just about anywhere.
Right.
So I just kind of kept it in my back pocket, and after a while, I just decided, well, I'm not going to find an artist. It's just not going to happen. So I just kind of just filed the story away.
Yeah.
Fast forward to about 2017. I was at a comic book convention, little small comic book convention, held in a fire hall. And there was a guy there who was writing and drawing his own comics. And I said, man, you're living the life I want to live. I want to, I have an idea for a comic book, but I can't draw. And he's like, well, why don't you write it like a pulp story? Find somebody who can just do some black and white pictures and just kind of sprinkle them through the story.
Nice.
And then my wife was like, well, if you're going to go to the trouble of writing the story, why don't you just write it as a book?
It makes perfect sense.
And then it was a few months after that, I finally, I grabbed my laptop, sat down at my kitchen table, and started typing out the first 3 or 4 chapters of Deadlock.
That is so cool. And you didn't really have a writing experience before then to
Nope.
speak of.
I was looking on YouTube as I was writing, trying to remember all my English class, how many, how far do I indent the paragraph? Do I still put 2 spaces behind a period, or is it just one?
Right. Well, Lollipop Gang has it right. You always listen to the wife.
And she was right.
They usually are. So what was it like taking those first steps? Because I'm sure, now you're working on, I believe, your 5th. Well, you've done 3 books and a novella, and then you're working on your next one. But what was that process like when you first started? Like, how much learning did you go through in that process, as far as like figuring out how it was exactly that you wrote stories?
Oh, it was quite a bit of learning. I remember when the first 3 or 4 chapters, it was all just blocks of text, just
right.
No indentations, no nothing. It was just blocks and blocks of text.
I don't even use periods.
And I had to, like I said, I had to, search back into my high school days about writing stories, and going on YouTube and looking at people, just basic, how do I write a book?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, when I was going through that, there was not a lot of good information.
Right.
There was a lot of people telling you, hey, I've written a book and you can too, but they didn't tell you how. Or it was a mid-20-something young woman whose room was completely white and everything was, arranged. So, and they had a little dog, and they're telling you about their book they're writing, but there was no information on to tell me how to write a book.
Right.
And the most infuriating one I saw, this guy was like, yeah, if I don't write 15,000 words a day, I don't feel like I'm really writing. Like 15,000 words a day. I have a job. I have a family. I can't sit down and just write 15,000 words a day. It takes me a good 2.5 hours to write 2,000 words, because I still hunt and peck with 2 fingers.
So how much of on that first story, how much of it did you have fleshed out in your head? And when I say that, what I mean is, did you kind of have like the characters developed, but you still needed to work the story some? How did that go?
I had the beginning, I had the middle, and I had the end. And I had the main character down, and I had the villain. I had was altered a bit. He was, his introduction in the book was going to be different originally, but I liked doing it the way I did in the book better. And originally he was going to be on a in a like a police transport, being transported to another prison because he was going to be put to death. And he gets rescued,
right,
so to speak.
I can see some reasons why you might want to change that for the story the way you told it.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So I don't know. I think to me it's fascinating that there are so many different ways that artists can attack the same situation. So like when you listen to musicians talk about when they wrote songs, some of them, the lyrics came to them. Some of them, they literally just make stuff up and do what they call word salad. And they just keep throwing out words and sentences until something sticks. And then they build off of that. You know what I'm saying? They just need to find a starting point and then they make something work.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to storytelling, I think one of the most interesting ways I've ever heard is when somebody develops their characters. So they come up with like the backstory for their character, who their character is, what their character does, the morals of the character. They roll the dice, if you will, and figure out what stats each one of their character has. And then they sort of put them in a scenario and they let the character tell the story. Like, mm-hmm. where does that character go? But I think you have to have such an incredibly deep understanding of your characters to be able to do that, and just kind of, willy-nilly see what happens.
Yeah. When I first wrote Deadlock, I had a very definite path for my character, and when I got to my next book, Fallout, I knew my character well enough that as I was writing it, I knew where I wanted to go. But then I kind of thought of some other things, like, well, what if he did? He kind of likes doing this, and he kind of likes doing that. And I kind of thought it out. I'm like, you know what? I think we're gonna go this way instead. I think he would probably want to do this more than this.
That does make a lot of sense. I like how you said that. Yeah, because I think sometimes what you have in your head, or even what you have at the beginning of your story, by the time you get to a certain point, the way that character has developed over that those chapters, they've changed. Mm-hmm. And now this one specific thing that you were going to have them do, you now have to change that scenario because either they wouldn't do that or that's not how they would do that.
Yeah. I know when I write a story, just like the first one, when I'm going into a story, I like to know where the story starts. I like to know what's going on in the middle of the story, and I have to have a definite ending. Whatever happens in between all that, I give some wiggle room to.
Right.
But the beginning, middle, and end are like, they're like marked. They're set in stone. They have to be this way.
I like that. And I've actually thought about it before, what I think would be interesting. In fact, we'll talk about one of your short stories that you've done on your website. Oh, where would you reckon I wrote that down on? Probably right there. Okay. Countdown to Oblivion.
Yes.
First, great story. But tell us the hurdles that you placed on yourself to write that story?
That story is I was actually on YouTube, cruising around, just looking, and I found a YouTube video. Someone was talking about books written in strange formats. Actually, the one that got me started was one where this guy said he has his book, a million points of pi or something like that. Basically, the whole book is pi to the millionth digit.
Right.
I'm like, that's very strange. And then I found this other video where they're talking about there's some of these books that are written. Some books are written so you have to flip them around, and I thought, what would be an interesting way to write a story? Maybe not a whole book, but just a story. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat if I started out with a certain amount of words, and then the next chapter cut that amount in half.
Yeah.
And then the next chapter cut that amount in half. So now I have to come up with a story, and I have to be able to tell a story in a way that people are going to understand it. But I only have 512 words in this first chapter. I can't go over that.
Yeah.
So
that's
awesome. Then I wrote that chapter, and then I'm like, all right, now I only have 256 words. How am I going to keep the action rolling and tell the same story with half?
Right. And you just keep going like that. That is so awesome. Well, in the same vein, what I was thinking is I think it would be neat if over time, if you took just a handful of short stories that, kind of roughly they could make sense, at least in the same universe. And then you place those 4 stories in a story, in a finger quote book, and now you stitch them together. So the new story you're writing is how all of those things happen in this book.
Yeah.
Because I just think I find it, if I'm handed a blank canvas, to me, the possibilities are so utterly endless that I cannot start. So it actually helps me start any project if there are guardrails up. It's like, if I could build any house I wanted, well, I'd be in the planning stages for the rest of my life. But if somebody says, this is your house, it's kind of crappy. Okay, well, now I have a starting point. The foundation is set, the walls are where they are. Okay, now I can do little things here and there, and I can take this broken down house and I can turn it into something great. Because there's guardrails.
Yeah. And
I think if nothing else, those are just great exercises for exercising your creativity and sharpening your storytelling skills.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because trying to communicate what the character is going through in only 8 words, you really got to choose your words carefully.
Right. Yes, I can't imagine the mind-numbing. Like, at first, that was probably fun, but boy, when you got to the last 2 or 3 pages, that had to be kind of irritating.
Well, again, I actually knew where I wanted the story to end, so I knew the last word, so I was able to go from the last word and kind of go backwards.
That's nice. All right, well, let's go ahead. I got some questions. So, unfortunately, I have had a crazy week IRL, so I did not get to prep quite as well as I would have liked to, but this is the cover for your first book, Deadlock. And I have a question because there is an older version of this with a different cover.
Yes.
What happened there?
Well, when that book came out, with the older cover, it was I was very excited to get the book out. I had
Right.
written the book. I had gone through all the steps. I sent the book out to my editors, beta readers, editor again. I finally got the book back in the condition I wanted it. It was done, and I'm like, all I need is a cover, and I can get it going. And so I went on this site called Fiverr,
Okay.
and I found a woman who I think she lives in Africa somewhere, and she was willing to do
I also found a woman on Fiverr, so you're not alone.
And she said she could do the cover for me. The price was right, so she sent me a mock-up of it. I'm like, you know what? Let's go with it. I'm all right with that. And so for the first year or so, that's what the cover looked like. And then when I wrote the second book, I'm like, I kind of want to have these covers be a little more cohesive. I want them to kind of have the same look. So that's when I went ahead and I had the cover changed.
Okay. So now you've artificially created a collector's item.
Yes.
That's a genius plan. That is a genius plan. So there are so many different publishing avenues. Did you look into any of them to kind of figure out what was even feasible or possible, or did you go straight to print on demand?
Oh, I went straight to print on demand because I write superhero action fiction novels. Not something that a lot of the big publishing houses are looking for traditionally.
Right.
And unfortunately, when I started writing, a lot of the publishing houses and the agents that were looking for writers were not looking for this.
Right.
They were looking
it
for
happens.
True. So I thought, I'm just gonna. I want to tell this story. I believe in this story, so I'm going to put it out there independently, and I'm going to roll with it.
That's awesome. Let's see what's going on in the chat because we got some stuff going on. We got Snuggie Jr. in the chat. What's up, chat? And then Snuggie is talking smack to me. So we're not going to put that on the screen because no good reason for that. Lollipop Gang. She has a question. What is the best way to support an author? Is it to buy a printed version, an ebook? What is the best way?
Any way that you enjoy reading a book, I say go for it. Me personally, I am a physical media guy. I like real books. I like DVDs. I like CDs. I like having the media in my hand. But any way you want to buy the book is great.
Yeah. Snuggie agrees with you.
He knows.
Snuggie knows what's up. Okay, so you've done the Everrealm book series, which is
I'm sorry, Evo Realm.
Oh, I'm sorry, Evo Realm.
Evo Realm, yes.
Evo Realm. I am not hooked on phonics.
No worries.
And then you have the novella Wrath and Blaze. And my understanding is we can read that after or in between book 1 and 2.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. It takes place, in between the first 2 books. This was another fun experiment I did. I wrote this originally as a 10-part series on my website where
okay.
Every month I put out a chapter of the story. And then I let it go. And then after it was done, I let it up for a few months. And then I took it down completely. I warned people. I said, if you haven't read it, read it now because in a few months it's gone away. And when that time came, I took it down and I polished it up a bit and made a proper book out of it.
Nice. So in the editing process, how much does an editor change a book? Like that, because that was your first time going through it. What did you think about that process? Did you get changes back and think, that changed the story, or?
Not as much as I thought I would. My editor, she suggested changes. She said, maybe this might work better, or maybe put this here and this there. And there were some suggestions I took, and there were some that I didn't, because at the end of the day, she said, this ultimately is your book. However you want to do it, it's your vision. So, you can take my advice, you cannot take my advice. And like I took some of her advice, and there were some things where I said, you know what? No, this absolutely has to be in the book. I am not changing it at all.
Nice. Yeah, I bet that's just a weird experience because prior to handing that over, that is your baby. You've combed through this thing and you said, this is what I want. Now polish it.
Actually, the beta readers are the ones that have a little more power when it comes to changing things in books.
Oh, yeah, I suppose they do. Yeah, but your beta readers are typically trusted individuals, are they not?
Well, no, I found most of my beta readers again on Fiverr.
Oh, okay.
So I've the Deadlock, my first book, Deadlock, I had Blair, one of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I had her crying a lot. I thought, women cry when bad things happen. I didn't know any better.
#facts.
So I sent this book out to a couple different beta readers, and one beta reader said, "Why is she crying so much? I don't. It takes me out of the story. It's dumb. She shouldn't be crying so much." And I started rereading it. I'm like, maybe I should probably change some of that. So I rewrote like the first third of the book to fix that. Sent it back to the beta readers, and I got a much better feedback from that version.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, that works then.
Yeah, no, books do not have to be accurate to real life.
No.
You know what I mean?
But
because they're always crying. You were right. You weren't wrong, Steve.
But if I want a book to do well, it might behoove me to listen to people who read a lot of books and know what they like. So I was willing to make that change, and it didn't hurt.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So we've already covered that essentially this is a comic story told in novel form. That's so awesome. And to me, it really reminds me of really the way books used to be written, or at least the books that I used to enjoy reading. Mm-hmm. I don't think that that's too crazy, but as I said earlier, life has gotten crazy here, so I was unable to finish Deadlock because I got it in the mail and I got about halfway through it, and then life flipped upside down. But I love what I'm reading so far, and I don't want any spoilers. But yeah, I love that style. I really love that style, and to me, it reminds me of a good 90s style.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was shooting for.
Well, that's perfect. All right, so let's talk about your webpage a little bit.
Okay.
So I'm assuming you probably started the web page first, right?
No, actually, I think I started it after I wrote the first book. Again, I saw some people online talking about having a website, so you can, talk to fans or kind of get people interested in you. So I thought, I probably need a website along with a YouTube site so I can try to draw in as many people as possible.
Yeah, that's unfortunately the name of the game. I know a lot of writers and artists don't really like that side of it, but that really kind of changed the game, because now to be the most recognized, to get the most sales, at least on an indie forum, the truth is, if you're the best marketer in the group, you're going to stand out above everyone else, even though, plus or minus 10%, your work may not be as good as someone else's.
Mm.
And that has to just be terrible for people that aren't all that into it, because chasing that algorithm is a real thing.
Well, my website for the first couple years, I really didn't do much with it. I didn't take it as seriously as I should have.
Right.
And just last year, maybe it was the end of 2023, I started finally taking notice to it and trying to make it something better. And it actually has gotten quite better.
Nice. Well, actually, Snuggie brings up a good point. What's traffic like through that site?
Well, I don't get a whole lot of sales, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
I wish I did. I have a spot on my website, the Evil Realm bookstore, where you can go there and you can, all my books are listed. You can, there's a description and if you click on it, it'll take you right to Amazon, right to the book. So, but I get a lot of traffic on my website, but I offer a lot of free stuff for other aspiring writers, and I get I get a lot of traffic, but just I can't seem to get anyone to get over to buy the book.
Right. Well, it's like it's like the people that see your post as opposed to the people that heart it.
Mm.
My post will be seen by 600 people and 3 likes. And that's kind of how each one of the mediums that you maintain happen. Is the more you get there, the more you're going to actually do the thing you want, which is to sell. But that number does not necessarily correlate.
No.
But it's much like, for me right now, the only things I am doing is Twitter and YouTube. And again, I can actually, I'm doing better on Twitter than I am on YouTube, but there is kind of a back and forth between the two, where you can bring people from Twitter to YouTube and from YouTube to Twitter, but there's not a direct correlation. But you really don't have a choice. You have to build multiple platforms because you cannot rely on one reliably.
Yeah. Yeah, I have YouTube, I have Twitter, I have my website, I have a Facebook page. I even have an Instagram page, but I haven't posted anything on that in like probably over a year. So
actually, I was going to ask you about that. But let's answer Snuggie's question real quick. So the sales are through Amazon or the site?
They're through Amazon, but if you come to my site, you can look at a description of the book and click on it, and it'll take you to Amazon where you can get the book.
Yeah, when I saw that, I thought, man, I wish I would have clicked on that to buy the book instead of just searching you on Amazon, because then I would have given you another metric through there. But I did not do that. But on the next ones, I will. So actually, that's an interesting question. Could you have an affiliate link on your own website to Amazon for your own book? I suppose you could, right?
I guess you could, yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Don't see why you couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, other people do for other people. So, I mean, no sense in not making money off yourself if Amazon's going to give it to you.
True.
No, but I think your website is amazing for, you have so much in there for the tips for new writers. I mean, you give them genre starting points for just as references. Yeah, that's an amazing thing. And, you know, we'll get to your YouTube, but you also have a lot of great videos for young writers and that too, or old writers that don't know what they're doing. Like we don't want to leave the Snuggies out.
Yeah. I think the big thing that seems to be drawing people into the website are the 100 common and uncommon superpowers.
Yes. Really? Yeah. That's a big one.
That's the biggest. As a matter of fact, if you go on Google and type in superpowers list, I'm the top of Google.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. So I don't have any idea what this means, but Snuggy's asking, have you ever tried to query?
No. I like.
Can you explain that to me?
I like going through the query means looking for an agent, someone to represent you to go into traditional publishing.
Oh, okay.
When you hear about writers getting rejected time and time again, that's what they're doing. They're sending out query letters to potential agents and publishing houses, and they get rejected over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's a lot of rejection, and that's probably not a whole lot of fun. And it's probably, for what you do, unfortunately, a waste of time currently. Yeah, but you also have the short stories on there. You have an amazing blog. Don't know why I wrote down blob there, and I almost said it. But your blog's very you're very transparent in it. You know, you've been talking about how in the last basically this last quarter, you've explained in there all the troubles and tribulations that you've been going through. And I think that's a really good read. I think a lot of people need to see that life isn't perfect. You know, we're not all living the Facebook pictures that we throw up there.
No, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that anybody who comes by and reads the blog or the blob, whatever.
You might want to rename that.
But I want them to know that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's not something that you see Hemingway sitting at a typewriter. He's got a drink in his hand. He's typing. The world's great. No, I got a full-time job. I got a family. I got bills to pay. Just things, life happens. And in amongst that, I try to sit down for 2 hours, half hours a day and, type a chapter out or something.
Yeah. So explain this to me. Explain to us, what is the Cloak and Dagger enrollment test that you have on your website?
Something I made up. I thought it'd be fun. In the world that I'm creating, there is a semi-secret government agency called Cloak and Dagger, and it's divided up into Cloak, which are more of a spy men in black type of thing.
Yeah.
And Dagger is more of a military side of it. And so I thought it'd be neat to kind of come up with a little personality test, answer a couple questions, and see where you would fall. Would you be a cloak agent or a dagger agent?
Yeah. Got to put this up here real quick. Lollipop Gang says, sounds like the dudes are the ones crying. Right now, maybe you should hush down a little bit when we're talking about the Cloak and Dagger agency enrollment test. This is kind of serious stuff. Because for anybody that, wouldn't have guessed, I'm a cloak agent.
Oh,
I'm a cloak agent. Yeah. Yeah, so I recommend everybody goes and checks that out, because you should really know what kind of an agent you are.
That exactly. You never know when you might need to know that.
That is very true, and we can't all do DNA tests to figure out what kind of agents we are. So it's nice having an online test. All right, so let's move over to your YouTube channel. So your first video was in March 15th, 2021. You are nearing an anniversary.
Yes. Yeah, next year be 5 years.
That's amazing. So, one thing I'd like to talk about, thumbnails. Your thumbnails have gotten, they just continue to get better. Man, how much does that suck, having to get better at that skill?
Yeah. Well, just like being an indie writer, I gotta write, I gotta promote, I gotta market, I gotta do everything myself. Being on YouTube, it's almost like running your own little TV channel. You gotta, come up with the programming, you gotta come up with the ads, which are pretty much the thumbnails, trying to draw people in. It can be exhausting sometimes.
Yes, thumbnails do suck, but not Steve's. Yeah, no, I'm doing, mine are just incredibly simple and easy right now, and I've decided, at least until I get a lot better at a lot more things, that at least for now, I'm just going to essentially keep using the same template, and just switching out names and faces. But also, when you look around YouTube, everyone has a different method. Some of them, and sometimes the same method does not work with two different people. But I feel like your thumbnail should stick out to a fan. So when a fan is scrolling, particularly on their phone, if they're just scrolling, I want them to see my thumbnail and stop.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that was something I noticed that you had started using the, because I don't know if we mentioned this once we started talking about this. I know we did at the beginning, but your YouTube channel is The Nerd Way, and you have a awesome logo for that. And I noticed that you were putting that in the corner of your thumbnails, but then you recently stopped.
Yeah, I was putting it in there, and then I stopped for a while because I was like, is it really working? Is it doing anything? And just recently, I snuck it in again for something, and I thought, you know what, I like that. I'm gonna try to use that more often again.
Nice.
It's people talk about branding. You have to brand yourself. Brand your channel. So I figure if people are scrolling through, if nothing else, if they see the little N logo for the Nerd Way,
yeah,
that might be enough for them to stop and go, oh, okay, I recognize this.
Yeah. We have Kayla in the chat. What's going on, Kayla? Okay, so yeah, and I think your logo is pretty awesome there. Have you ever, actually, let's talk about your shorts. So I've been noticing, just looking at other people's channels, I haven't done any shorts yet, but man, it sure looks like people get a little bit more views on their shorts than they get on videos. Have you noticed, does that drive any more traffic to your site? Does that help you?
I have a few shorts. Maybe if I have 10, I'd be surprised. But I have one short that has driven probably half, well, close to half of all my subscribers to me. And it was a short I made out of sheer frustration. It's about I several years ago, probably 5 years ago now. I can't remember how long it's been. Well, I guess not, because my channel's only been around for 4. But I went and bought some comic books from a guy online. Met up with them, and comic books normally you have them bagged and boarded, so you keep them nice and so they're not getting corners bent and things. This guy had them in a 3-ring binder and in just like these plastic sheets that you put in a 3-ring binder.
Yeah,
It's kind of flopped around, and I'm like, okay, thank you. I paid for the comics, took them home, and I made this comic. I'm like, this is not how you treat a comic book. This is how you treat a comic book. And it didn't do much, and then all of a sudden it just took off.
nice.
And it's my only viral thing, I think. But that short drives in more views and more subscribers, I think, than anything I've ever done.
Well, you do have one of your videos, Time to Let Go Star Wars, or Time to Let Star Wars Go, sorry, Dyslexia. That one has 9,000 views, and that is the highest viewed. Like, what was it like for a video like that to kind of take off a little bit? That outperformed everything else. What was that feeling like?
It was fun. I mean, I got a decent amount of comments from that. And I mean, my phone was just kind of ding, 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 with comment, and it was kind of surreal, seeing something like that happen.
Yeah, I bet, because that kind of happened over a few day period.
Yeah,
like the big part.
Yeah, because it seems like most of my videos, the first couple hours, maybe even the first 12 hours, nothing really seems to catch, and then all of a sudden I get this spike, and it just goes out into into the ether, and people start eating it up.
That's pretty awesome. And so you're also a little over 2,000 subscribers. Did you ever have any times like during that video or the short, were there any specific times where you gained like a lot of subscribers in a short period of time, or was it all just kind of slow, steady growth?
No, there were times where I had a big burst. I did one. I was trying to do some shorts. I was trying to do like I have a couple did you know type of shorts for comic books, and there's one that I put out about Spider-Man and how at one point Michael Jackson wanted to buy Marvel Comics because he wanted to be Spider-Man in the movies.
Yeah.
And so I put that out as a short, and I got like 10,000 views in like a day. And I think I got like 50 some subscribers out of that.
Man, that's got to give you just a little bit of a dopamine hit, right?
Yeah, I was like, I was shocked. I'm like, I think any. I mean, I was just trying to get a little bit of engagement, get a little back and forth, and
yeah,
it just spikes like that. I'm like, it's incredible.
Yeah. So I think Kayla's talking about how you purchased those comics.
Mm.
She would be horrified to see comics like that.
Yeah, I had to just kind of grit my teeth and thank the guy for bringing the comics, and I took them home, and I was like, oh my god, I hope these things are in decent shape when I get them home.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of how it is. All right, so now I want to go back to about Christmas time. I was really blown away because I distinctly remember listening to 100 podcasts that month, and literally everybody was grifting on whether or not Die Hard was a Christmas movie. But man, yours just really underperformed. Were you surprised by that? Because I mean, everyone was grifting on that.
Yeah, I thought I'd get a little more out of it, even if it was my poor storytelling ability. I might be able to write a good story, but I can't narrate one to save my life.
That makes sense. Yeah. No, I totally understand that. Okay, so what are some things that if you could go back you would change them a little bit, as far as like how you approach something or how you did something, primarily in like the YouTube space? Is that something that you might have like started something way earlier just to start growing on an audience?
Yeah, if I would have thought about it sooner, I probably would have tried to start a YouTube channel sooner before I got my book done, just so I could, kind of cultivate more of a following. That way, when the first book did come out, I'd have a little more, of a group of people who knew about it, who would jump on it, hopefully, when it came out.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of your when we were talking about your blog, I totally forgot to throw this one in there. But you wore an eye patch for a while. How awesome was that?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of cool. I mean, I had some people, come up to me and go, "Wow, that's pretty cool." And then I had some people give me a side eye, like, "What's this guy trying to be?" Yeah. Back in February, I woke up I had a really bad flu. Woke up one day and I was seeing double. And I thought maybe my sinuses, I had like pressure on my sinuses and it was causing me to see something. But after my flu went away and I was still seeing double, I'm like, that's not good. So I went to the eye doctor and they said, "You have 6 nerve palsy." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
I don't even think I've heard of that.
Well, have you heard of Bell's palsy?
Yes.
6 nerve Bell's palsy. That is the 7th nerve in the in the face that affects that. I got the 6th. I got the 6th nerve. I got the one just above it, and that affects the eye muscle and how I didn't want to focus right.
Yeah, that had to be annoying because I know you chose to kind of stop driving there for a while.
Yeah. It's legal where I live to drive with an eye patch, but I tried it once.
In Ethiopia, right?
Yeah. And I just didn't feel comfortable. I had this blind spot on one side. So like, you know what? I think it just might be safer if I just let my wife chauffeur me around. Which she loved it. She loved that job.
Oh, I bet. It kept her from having to go cry all the time, probably.
Yeah, it did.
So during that time, and we already talked about how it's been a rough few quarters. If anybody's interested, go read the blog. Motivation. Man, what do you do when things get down? They're not going your way, because there's so many writers out there. There's so many artists out there that are just like you. They're in the same boat. They work all day. They have kids. They have a wife that's somewhere crying. And how do you have that motivation when life always seems like it's against you to just sit down and do the work? And when I say do the work, I mean do the work that you're not getting paid to do, but it's your passion.
Yeah. I truly enjoy writing. It's something I when I first started writing, I was writing out of desperation. When I wrote my first book, I was battling some anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
And to get through it, I read somewhere that writing was supposed to help you through your depression. But I didn't know if it meant just writing in general or writing down your feelings. So I took it as writing just down in general and just started writing the book.
Right.
Which by the time I got to chapter 10, my anxiety and depression were gone. I did a complete 180. I was a brand new person. It was great. And I found out that I just love writing.
Nice.
So and my wife saw the change, and every time I feel like I'm getting down, every time I feel like I might just want to hang it up, she comes behind me, she goes, "Don't quit. You love writing.
Nice.
It helps you, it keeps you sane. Keep writing." So I have so many stories I want to tell, and I want to get them out. And if I don't write these stories, no one else is going to. So I got to do it.
Right. Well, and the truth is, if you go back to that time when you started writing, thinking, man, hopefully this is going to get me out of depression. If you would have started by writing your feelings, you'd still be there, because that is incredibly depressing.
Yeah.
Feelings are probably the grossest thing I've ever felt in my life. Not a big fan, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't like them either.
No, but that's awesome, man. Yes, I think sometimes, when you're feeling down, when the world is not going exactly your way, sometimes you just need motivation and a reason, and just any semblance of happiness, and telling a story, your story, someone else's story. That's pretty awesome. So Lollipop Gang apparently has been choosing her superpower this whole time, and it is the power negotiation, canceling out powers of others. Is that's apparently on your list?
Apparently so. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, look at that. Snuggie thinks that's a pretty strong one. I think it's OP. Don't you think, Snuggie?
No.
Oh, come on. Canceling out somebody's other super. That's the Uno reverse card. We don't need that. We don't need that.
There's all kinds of fun stories you could tell with a power like that.
That's true. So this is something I've noticed personally, and I notice it with the power of hindsight, which is my superpower. Foresight is not my superpower. But one thing I've noticed is the more I learn about storytelling, the more I learn about why this is a good story, why this works in a story, but it doesn't work in this story. In fact, you mentioned narration. And so when you look at film, you're always, the rule of thumb is show, don't tell. But then you go to Shawshank Redemption, and telling is the part of the story, not the only part of the story you remember, but I mean, they used it beautifully, and that absolutely, was done correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so we learn all these things about storytelling. We learn why things are good, why they're not. And I don't know how you are, but I take those things and I blend them in my brain, and I think about them a million hours. but the thing that I've noticed in hindsight is the more I learn about it, I can't watch bad stuff anymore. Whereas before, think back when you're a kid and you really don't know anything about storytelling, everything's good because it's all new. But the moment you start being able to tell good from bad, and then you keep refining that craft, eventually everything sucks except the best. Right?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, there are books that I probably would have read had I not, started writing my own stuff. And now that I read about what these books are, and I'm like, no, that's just that's it. No, I can't read that. I just and television and movies, there shows that I'm like I said, I might have enjoyed some, but now it's just the storytelling is just so weak. Although I do have a weak spot for the really, really, really bad movies. Like
yes.
the Killer Clowns from Outer Space movies.
Right.
I love those.
Completely know what you're saying there. All right, looks like we gotta catch up a little bit on this chat. I don't even know what is going on with these people. Snuggie apparently wears shorts. Snuggie chooses the power of odor. I'm not sure what the Lollipop Gang can do with that one. Kayla chooses to be a bitch.
That could be a good power.
Well, she certainly beat Snuggie in a 1-to-1 fight. Snuggie just lost. Oh man. Snuggie says, "Don't underestimate my power. Stinky cheese is better than a force field." So you must be talking Limburger then, there, Snuggie. Well, we'll have to see who would win with between Kayla and the Lollipop Gang. Sounds like that would be an interesting fight. Ooh, Rotten Limburger, man. Snuggie, you were just
that is definitely a deterrent. People
right. I mean, not from food, because I think Rotten Limburger would be delicious. Maybe with some sauerkraut. Don't tempt me, Snuggie. That's the kind of guy I am. All right. So have you we talked a little bit about it, but you said essentially Instagram didn't give you anything, right?
No. Instagram is not it's, in my opinion, not a good spot for writers. At least not indie writers with very small followings. Unfortunately, most of the time I get people liking my stuff and want to follow me on Instagram. They usually end up being porn bots and stuff. So I just keep blocking people from that. So.
Oh yes, I never block the porn bots, or I'd lose half my followers. So, and I'm not about to do that, because every time X sweeps in to get rid of the porn bots, I drop by 20%, and that does not help me. So, what about Facebook? Do you have any kind of presence going on there that is effective, or that you find effective?
I don't know if it's effective. Unfortunately, Facebook seems to be more my family and friends from high school and stuff. That seems to be more of the crowd I have cultivated over there.
Okay. Do they buy your books?
Yeah, they do.
Well, there you go. That's really all that matters. They can be my friends and families if they buy my books. Otherwise, they're out. We're putting them on Instagram probably. What about TikTok? Have you thought about doing any maybe you could come up with some special dances for your book series.
Yeah, I'm not a TikTok guy. I don't dance. I just don't have it in me.
Trying to think, is there anything else that I haven't mentioned as far as a platform that you use or that you've tried?
I have Goodreads. That's out there. That's mainly for readers and people looking for books. It's not really a social media site, but
is it more like a critic list or something?
No, it's more like a if you like say you like reading murder thrillers, you can go to Goodreads and type that in, and it'll bring up all kinds of authors and books, and you can scroll through them and find something you might like.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense.
I wish they would buy the book. I mean, even if they didn't read it, at least just buy it. I'll take their money. I'll take their money.
I'm just saying that would help. It couldn't hurt. So X is pretty much the platform. So you're basically where I am, except you went through all the hard work of doing all the other ones. But essentially, for the most part, you're leaning heavy on X and YouTube.
Yeah, because X. I mean, there are I would like to think my books have a lot of crossover with comic book fans. So I'm trying to find both comic book fans who would be willing to forego pictures for just words,
mm-hmm.
and I've seen a fair amount of just novel readers on X as well. So I'm trying to scoop both of those people into my orbit.
Right. And man, that can be such a tedious game. Such a tedious game. Mm-hmm. So is there any other ways outside of any of those platforms or any other things you can think about as far as promoting yourself that you have either done or thought about and chose not to?
I can't think of any.
No billboards.
No billboards. The thought has crossed my mind, but I haven't. Where I live now, we don't have billboards. So
interesting. The chat might be interested in learning this. I have had a billboard before.
Wow.
Yes, I have had a billboard. I am that important.
Before I moved from where I used to live to where I live now, and I had deadlock out, I came like this close to having a billboard. I think it was like $150 for a week.
Oh wow!
And so I'm like, and it was one of those digital ones too. It flashed. Yours was up for maybe 10-15 seconds, and then they had another one up. So it kept rotating. But I thought maybe I might try that, but I never pulled the trigger on it.
Yeah, I just don't know that would. To me, it seems like that would probably not do it. You know? But it is cool to do it at least one time. What's Snuggie saying? You're wanted for indecent exposure. Billboard doesn't count. Hush your mouth, Snuggie. I was on a billboard. How about you? Snuggie is always trying to dox people. That's right. All right. So I have a question. So I hurt my back several years ago, and it was pretty rough. And I went through months of incredible pain where I really couldn't move. And the only thing that got me through that was because I couldn't do anything. except sit in very awkward positions. I just listened to any kind of audiobook, something that where my brain could follow along with a story. To just take my mind off the pain and give it something to do. Have you thought about doing any audiobooks for yours?
I would love to have audiobooks. Thing is, audiobooks are pricey.
I can imagine.
To find the right person to read your book, it's quite expensive. I mean, even again going on Fiverr, a lot of these guys, they want, you're spending on just average like $1,000 to get your book read.
That's pretty tough. Shout out to Aldous for showing up. Appreciate you being here, man. Yeah, so you looked into that, and it's just a bit too cost heavy.
If my books sold more, if I was getting more of a steady income off my books, I would absolutely just set some money aside and put it back into audiobooks.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, I just don't have that type of cash lying around right now.
Right. Well, and because I've seen YouTube channels where they put their books on there, and that way, they're getting YouTube revenue from people listening to the books there, which also gives you more exposure. And I know that from a lot of, there's going to be several different ways you can look at this. Some people are going to look at it and say, well, if I do that, less people will buy my book, my physical book. But other people say, yes, but more people watching or listening to my book on YouTube or, anywhere else spreads my name and potentially down the road, then I sell more books. What is your thoughts on that? Would you ever, is that how you would do it kind of, or?
I would absolutely, if I can get Deadlock on an audiobook, I would absolutely, I don't know if I'd put the whole book out, but I might put maybe a couple chapters or maybe half a book and just try to get them sucked in enough to want to get the whole book. Maybe if I was like a Stephen King guy and I had like 60 books out, I'd probably throw the first 2 or 3 books out just get a following that way. And then, after they hear the first couple, they're like, oh, wow, well, it's let's go ahead and buy the rest of them.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense to me. So all this brings up a good point. How about the DIY approach?
Yeah, like I said, if you listen to my Christmas video about Die Hard, you'll understand why I don't do it. I'm not a good narrator.
Yeah, that would be such a hard one, particularly editing. That's 1,000,000 hours of you listening to your own voice, which has got to drive somebody insane. But for the kids listening at home, Aldous is recommending you sit in an empty bathtub with your microphone.
Yes, that would.
What do you think about the authors that put them on YouTube and it's AI read?
That is a very touchy subject.
Yes, that's an onion. Let's go ahead and peel it. Let's make some friends and enemies in the chat.
There are some aspects of AI that I don't mind.
Right. Driving cars.
Book covers. I do not mind if an author needs to use an AI image for their book cover, because book covers can be, again, pricey depending on who it is, creating it.
Yeah.
If you get an artist who draws it and they take time to draw it and color it, and that could run you a couple $100.
Right. And I completely understand the people that would argue against that. I completely understand their point. But if that is your barrier to entry, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
my book needs a cover. The cover is not my book. What I made is the book.
right.
And if the barrier for me to get my art out there to to get what I made to the masses, then maybe that's one way to do it.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say my biggest problem. It's been a couple years since I tried to listen to the AI ones. I'm sure they're better now. But man, to me, they were so uncanny valley that I just couldn't, I just couldn't. I would try, but it would just, no, I couldn't do it.
Full disclosure, I actually did use AI voice to narrate another video I made about what would happen if the villain from Deadlock were to meet the Avengers.
Okay.
So
yeah,
that was a complete test. I wasn't trying to set the world on fire. I figured I'd make the video, I'd put it out, and it would do what it did.
Okay. Snuggie Jr. makes a pretty good point. Covers can sometimes sell a book, and that's absolutely true. I have bought many books off of the covers because, well, I'm retarded. So I understand. I absolutely understand it. Any book I have ever purchased in the airport was 100% purchased because of the cover.
Yeah. Anybody who says don't judge a book by their cover, that's nonsense. You absolutely judge a book by its cover. The only time you wouldn't do something like that is if it was a well-known author that then they can put just about anything on the cover and you're going to buy the book.
Right. I agree with that. Well, let's see if old Neon TARDIS is drinking enough coffee this morning, because he wrote down a lot of words here. He said AI can really help bring a creator up a level with certain things such as book covers, maybe thumbnails, etc., but could also be used for lazy creation too, where it just is the content. And that's absolutely true. That is a giant problem, in my opinion, on YouTube right now, is the YouTube audiobook world, which I have used many times over the last few years. There are dedicated channels now that they're kicking out a 3-hour AI story every single day. And it's just, it's trash, but it keeps getting better. And that's kind of a problem.
Yeah, I have heard some AI that sounds really close to human, and it's a bit scary,
right?
Especially if you can make it sound like a famous person or something like that. Now you don't know, is it real or is it Memorex?
Right. No, that's absolutely true. Lollipop Gang thinks you should let the porn bots read it. I could think of better uses for them, but if you want them to read you a book, by all means, go ahead. Aldous is correcting probably me. Button. I don't know, some kind of British thing, apparently. Kayla says art usually sells the book. Reading keeps you buying it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I have very seldom bought a book well, a younger version of me, very seldom bought a book because anybody told me it was a good story, because I come from a world of people that don't really even know how to read, let alone buy books. So yeah, she's 100% right there. Neon TARDIS is showing his age. Snuggie is a purist. I do know that about Snuggie. I follow him on X. For anybody out there who isn't following Snuggie, I suggest you do. He definitely is one of the people I check in on every day, if for no other reason, just to make sure he's not talking shit about me. But he's a purist, and he'll never use AI to troll. I believe that. I don't think Snuggie needs AI. I don't know how Snuggie. I'm not convinced Snuggie isn't AI as much as he trolls out there. Yeah, AI is going to be coming for your job, Snuggie.
Yeah, I'm not.
Lollipop Gang thinks that Neon TARDIS should be offended. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'm. AI, like I said, AI is good for some things. I would not write a story with AI. I wouldn't. I don't. I know there are a lot of writers out there that are afraid of AI right now. They're like, oh, people are just going to be able to write their own book and stuff. But AI is not going to be able to write a good book because it has no soul. And when you read a good story, you can feel it, and
right.
it's something AI cannot do ever.
Right. No, it's a little bit like a hooker. It's, you're having sex, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll get your story, but it'll leave you feeling empty when you're done with it.
Right. No, I agree with that. Neon TARDIS says, like the Hulk, who is always angry, I am always offended. Oh, come on, Snuggie. Don't be like that. I thought we were boys. Aldous is saying that's not true. There are redhead authors and they don't have souls. Aldous makes a valid point there, Steve. What do you have to say about that?
Yes, all redheads are soulless. So it doesn't matter what you have, if the writers or not, all redheads are soulless.
And another thing that made me think of that is not connected at all, but I would like everyone to hear this so that I'm the person who figured this out. When you meet left-handed people from here on out, always ask them if they can whistle. I am telling you, statistically, once I put that together, every left-handed, not every, but like 70% of left-handed people I have met since then do not know how to whistle. It's uncanny. And I am the person who found that. I'm basically a scientist.
I'll have to do some research on that. I know a few left-handed people.
Yeah, ask them. Let me know. Because on Saturday, you and I are going to be on Neon TARDIS's channel. I think you're going to be on there.
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll be there.
You are one of the hosts, so I don't think you have a choice. I have a choice. I choose to be there. We're going to be doing some commentary this weekend on Saturday over on Neon TARDIS's channel. So you can check Steve out there. And Steve, where else can everyone find you?
I think we've pretty much hit where we can find me. YouTube, X, on my website, StephenHudler.com. Those are probably the three best places that you can find me.
That's perfect. Aldous says he wants to be banned. Well, I'm pretty sure Lollipop Gang can take care of that. So, to everyone out there, I appreciate all of you showing up to the chat. Chat is king. Hail the chat. You guys are all the best. Peace. Cue outro music.